Ever wonder what the oldest city in the United States is? If you guessed Jamestown or Plymouth, you're not alone, but you'd be off by several decades. The real answer is St. Augustine, Florida, a city whose story is filled with imperial rivalry, religious fervor, and a hurricane that changed the course of history. So, how did this Spanish settlement become the first permanent European outpost in what would become the United States? Let's dive in. Long before the English set their sights on the New World, Spain had claimed a vast territory called La Florida. Explorer Juan Ponce de Leon first planted the Spanish flag here in 1513, but for decades, every attempt to establish a lasting colony failed. That is, until 1565, Spain's King Philip II had a serious problem on his hands. A group of French colonists, who were not just French but also Protestant Huguenots, had built a settlement called Fort Caroline, right near modern-day Jacksonville. This was a major issue for Catholic Spain. The French presence threatened Spain's territorial claims and, more importantly, the safety of its treasure fleets. These ships, loaded with riches from South America and Mexico, sailed right past the Florida coast on their way back to Spain. A French base was essentially a pirate's den waiting to happen. King Philip needed this threat eliminated, and he chose a tough, determined soldier for the job, Pedro Menéndez de Avilés. Menéndez's mission wasn't to find gold or trade with Native Americans. It was a military operation. Destroy the French colony. He set sail, racing against time. He knew that if France sent reinforcements to Fort Caroline before he arrived, his chances of success would plummet. He first spotted the Florida coast on August 28th, the feast day of St. Augustine, and named the site in his honor before continuing north to confront the French. But when Menéndez reached Fort Caroline, his worst fears were realized. A French fleet sent to reinforce the fort had arrived before him. His own expedition was now hopelessly outmatched. He had no choice but to retreat south to the spot he had just named St. Augustine and prepare for the inevitable French attack. His men were outnumbered and their position was weak. It looked like another failed Spanish venture. But then something incredible happened. As the powerful French fleet sailed south to crush the Spanish at St. Augustine, the sky darkened. A massive storm, likely a hurricane, descended upon the coast. The powerful winds and raging seas were too much for the French ships. The fleet was scattered, wrecked, and pushed far down the coast, its sailors and soldiers left shipwrecked and defenseless. Menéndez had been saved by a miracle. He realized his opportunity immediately. With the French fleet destroyed and most of Fort Caroline's soldiers on those ships, the fort was now vulnerable. Menéndez marched his men north through the torrential rain. They launched a surprise attack at dawn. The French soldiers, many still in their beds, were caught completely off guard. According to the Spanish expedition's chaplain, over 140 Frenchmen were killed in the assault. The Spanish conquered Fort Caroline without losing a single man. The story doesn't end there. Soon after Menéndez returned to his camp at St. Augustine, local Native Americans told him they had seen white men walking on the beach to the south. Menéndez knew these must be the survivors from the shipwrecked French fleet. He marched his troops to the location, now known as the Matanzas Inlet. He found the first group of survivors, cold, hungry, and without weapons. After a brief negotiation, all but 16 of them, who converted to Catholicism, were executed. A couple of weeks later, the French commander himself, Jean Ribaut, appeared at the same inlet with his remaining men. They too were exhausted and surrendered to the Spanish. Menéndez, showing no mercy, had them all executed. The inlet was grimly named Matanzas, the Spanish word for slaughters. The French threat in Florida had been brutally and decisively eliminated. Had it not been for that hurricane, Florida would very likely have become a French colony, and American history would look very different. With the French gone, Menéndez and his colonists got to work building a permanent settlement at St. Augustine. King Philip, pleased with the result, heavily subsidized the new colony. It wasn't just a military outpost. It became a crucial base. It served as a rescue point for Spanish ships damaged in storms and a strategic location to hunt pirates preying on the treasure fleets. The Catholic Church also saw a major opportunity, sending missionaries to convert the native population, making St. Augustine a center for both Spanish military and religious power in the New World. Of course, being a key Spanish stronghold made St. Augustine a constant target for Spain's enemies. In 1586, the famous English privateer Sir Francis Drake raided and burned the city to the ground, but the settlers returned and rebuilt. To better defend against future attacks, In 1672 they began construction on a massive stone fortress, the Castillo de San Marcos. This incredible structure, the oldest masonry fort in the continental United States, still stands guard over the city today, a silent witness to centuries of history. So the next time you think about America's origins, remember the dramatic story of St. Augustine. It's a tale of imperial ambition, religious conflict, and a fateful hurricane that secured Spain's foothold in North America and gave the United States its oldest, continuously inhabited city. Thanks for watching. If you found this piece of hidden history as fascinating as I do, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the stories that shaped our world. See you in the next video.